Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find us on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and professional writing needs. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Andrew Garlick. We're going to be discussing cybersecurity for small businesses. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits, as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to the viewers.
Sure. So obviously, my name is Andy Garlick, and I own a small consultancy called the Garlick Group. I founded this about 10 years ago after a long career in corporate finance and corporate technology. I started my career as a finance officer, and it was while being treasurer of the University of Detroit, where as a good Jesuit institution, it was always on the verge of bankruptcy. And one of my jobs was to get on the phone every 2 weeks with a consortium of banks and plead so that we could make payroll the next day. I learned how well to do finance, but the banks wanted paper for their files. And of course, no reports didn't exist. So I would write up a request, send it down to the computer center. This was in the mainframe days. And, some weeks later, some graduate student would call me and say, "We found this lying on the floor. Do you guys still need it?" And so that was my life. And I got frustrated. And so pure arrogance on my part. And as a quick aside, I have a very strange background. I have degrees in philosophy, classical literature, an MBA in economics, and in scriptural theology. But it was my linguistic background that helped me. I went to the library on a Friday afternoon, went up in the stacks, found a book on structured COBOL theory, checked it out, read it over the weekend. I said, this makes perfect sense. And I came in on Monday morning and I called down to the computer center and told them to open a COBOL account for me on the mainframe and give me access to the finance files. They all laughed hysterically, but they couldn't say no. I was a corporate officer. Mm-hmm. So I began programming in COBOL on my own and created reports that I needed to run the university and used COBOL like we would use a report writer today. That got me into the whole area of technology, and by the time I left the university, I was in charge of all technology, both academic and administrative. I joined the advertising industry, and I joined as a finance officer, but they wanted me less for my finance skills, which are fine, but because I had gained a reputation around Detroit as someone that could build systems that users could actually get value from. And that's what I did for several years. I was one day my finance hat was on and I closed the books. The next day I was building systems. Around 1990, I went to the board and I said, listen, I really enjoy the technology stuff. Let me just do that. And you can beat me up every 2 years instead of every 30 days. And they agreed. And I switched from a finance guy to a technology guy. And for the next 21 years, I was a global CIO in the advertising and marketing industry. I left the industry in 2011. It was a result of the ongoing problems of the recession of 2008. And I figured with great difficulty at my age at that point, getting another job at what I was making, I put my shingle out and I created the Garlick Group. And for the first several years, I focused on building information systems and doing digital transformation for very small companies. But about 2017, I kind of tripped over cybersecurity. The state of New York Department of Financial Services had just passed a number of very draconian regulations. Shortly after that, New York passed the SHIELD Act. And while it really encumbered big businesses, it caught everybody. And it came to the realization that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small businesses out there who still need to comply with the law, but they can't afford what most of the players were doing. They're, some quotes that some companies got to comply with the DFS regs was $40,000, and that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So I put together a whole program that was very cost effective for small businesses. And we've done cyber regulatory compliance in New York. In Massachusetts, they have a similar law. And both the healthcare industry with the HIPAA regs and the CPAs with the IRS regs all have very similar needs. So we provide both regulatory certification and ongoing support for very small businesses in the cybersecurity space.
Well, what I'd like to do, thank you for that. What I would like to do is to show our viewers a slide you prepared, which I hope you don't take onto an airplane with you.
Yes, exactly.
Wouldn't be good. What are we looking at?
Well, so my message to most small business owners, and Bruce, although we'll service any size company, my particular niche is companies under 20 or 10 employees, okay, who are really flying under the radar and really don't know what the risk landscape is. And so I try and tell them that their business is sitting on two ticking time bombs. One ticking time bomb, it comes from cyber threats. And last year, over 86% of the small businesses, whether they know it or not, were attacked by bad actors. Some got in, some didn't. But the bad actors are really looking at the small businesses because they know they do not have the protections in place that the big businesses have.
Don't they use small businesses as a conduit to larger businesses?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And 90% of them get in through an employee who clicks on an email, clicks on some kind of phishing email. So when we look at cyber threats, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when a small business is going to be attacked. And it could cost an incredible amount of money to recover. Mm-hmm. The second major ticking time bomb is regulatory compliance. Mm-hmm. Let's focus on New York for the moment. And if we look at the tri-state area, if anyone has businesses in Connecticut, New Jersey, even Pennsylvania, and they have clients or customers in New York, believe it or not, you're subject to the New York laws and regulations.
That's just like if you have a client in the EU, you're
GDPR, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Right. So if you are an industry that's regulated by the Department of Financial Services, so for example, if you're an insurance agent, if you're a financial planner, if you're a financial advisor, if you're a public adjuster, you have to have a license from the state of New York to do business. That license requires you to comply with 23 very draconian regulations governing cybersecurity in your business. If you're under 10 employees, you should get a break. You only have to comply with 11 of them. But if you don't comply and the auditor shows up at your door, the fines start at $25,000 and go up to $250,000 per occurrence. So the gentleman with the gold badge will knock on your door and he'll say, show me your cybersecurity policies. I don't have cybersecurity policies.
You're talking about insurance policies?
No, I'm talking about written policies that govern your operation.
Right.
Show me your last risk assessment. Every company is required to do a detailed risk assessment every year that analyzes not only their technological risks, but their physical risks. And if you don't have this, okay, here's a $25,000 fine. We'll be back in 30 days, kind of thing. Now, that's pretty specific. That law was passed in 2017. In 2020, New York also passed the SHIELD Act. This covers everybody. I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care if you're regulated or not. I don't care how big or small you are. You're required to comply with the SHIELD Act. The SHIELD Act has many things similar to the DFS regulations. It includes doing a risk assessment, having a plan in place, training all of your employees every year on cybersecurity compliance and cybersecurity awareness, and appointing a chief information security officer. Now, if you're a small business, you can appoint yourself as the chief information security officer. But as I tell my clients, that means you are now responsible for everything that a chief information security officer is supposed to do. Fortunately, the law says you can outsource that. And that's one of the other things that we provide. If people are interested, we can be their part-time CISO and make sure they always comply with everything. What's interesting is that beyond New York, if you look at the HIPAA regulations that cover medical offices, the big doctor's offices, the hospitals, they're covered. I'm worried about the independent dentist, the independent chiropractor, the independent psychologist who's in practice for themselves and is not even aware that they have to comply with HIPAA. HIPAA is even more complex in terms of risk assessment and risk controls. And then finally, any CPA that does taxes has to get a license from the IRS every year. It's called the Prepared Taxpayer Number. And they have to file a form where they certify under penalty of perjury that they comply with all the IRS regulations governing cybersecurity. I have a white paper that goes on for 4 pages, single-spaced, that details everything they need to comply with. And it's the small practitioner that I'm worried about, that they check the box, yeah, sure, we comply. And if they're ever caught, and it's the same thing with HIPAA, it's not a matter that they're going to be arrested tomorrow, but if something goes wrong, they will be investigated. And like for HIPAA, for not being in compliance and for not even trying to be in compliance, the minimum fine is $1.5 million. Yeah. So it's to me, it's an easy choice. Yeah. You're getting compliance or risk.
On that note, I want to move on to your final slide. I'm smiling because I was working at a nursing home when HIPAA came out, and I was responsible for writing the HR newsletter. Mm-hmm. And I had my process in place that more or less always worked. I would write it, then I would share it, and colleagues would make suggestions for changes. And then at the end, when everything was agreed upon, we'd do the proofreading. And I saved one person for last, the office manager who had never seen any of the drafts. So she was reading what was on the page and not what she remembered. And this went out. And when I saw colleagues reading it, they were laughing. And I asked them what was so funny. And they said, you have a typo. Instead of HIPAA, I had written hippo. And nobody caught it. So it was a Freudian slip by everybody.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is NIST?
That's the National Institute of Standards.
Okay. And what are we looking at here?
What we're looking at is their security framework. And any cybersecurity program to be compliant, there are several standards you can follow. I follow the NIST standards. When I put together a program for a company, we follow the NIST standards. which has 5 steps. First of all, you need to identify all of your risks.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've identified them, you could, well, like with any risk, you can do a number of things. You can ignore it. You can take protection against it, or you can try and push the risk off onto somebody else. Like, for example, you can buy cyber insurance. That's pushing the risk off onto somebody else. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the program also has to have ways to detect when there is an event. So let's say that your network, was attacked by a cyber criminal. Maybe your protections were in place and nothing happened, but nonetheless, you still need to record that and then figure out, are my protections strong enough? If you are attacked, there is a whole process that you need to go through correctly to respond to it. How do we document it? What did we lose? Who do we have to notify? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? How do we get our money back?
Well, what if you don't know it? What if it's a ransomware attack and it hasn't been launched yet?
Yeah, well, if it hasn't been launched, then you're not in any risk, and hopefully you have both.
Sure, you're at risk. It's there on your computer, on your network.
Right, and if your systems will detect it, we can do something about it.
Sure.
If your systems don't detect it, it could engage.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we go back to the whole identity and protect part of the process, where do you have an incident response plan in place? What are the steps you're going to follow? Because you can't panic when this happens. Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Have you been backing up your system? Have you been backing it up in both on-site and off-site? Are you using encryption yourself so that things can't happen? And so if something does happen, these are the exact steps we're going to follow. We have planned for this. We know what we're going to do if we get a ransomware attack. We know exactly what governmental bodies we need to notify. We know how to create an incident response team. We know how to find our backup data. We know who all of our clients are and how to contact them. That's all part of the incident response plan, as well as the disaster recovery plan. And then you have the whole recovery process. Our services do all of this. Now, not everybody buys all the services. One of our core services is simply the risk assessment. And that's a bundled service. It's a single cost. We do it every year, where not only do we do a complete risk analysis of your business, but we also provide you with a policy manual governing cybersecurity. We train all of your employees. We create the incident response plan and provide you with other documents that make you a little more secure. If you want protection and detection, we have a complete a remote management and monitoring system that we can do. This is an annual contract where we'll detect and respond. And if you want our CISO services, we just take everything off of your lap and make it our problem.
What is CISO?
Chief Information Security Officer. So someone who's trained in knowing how to do all this and keeping you safe so that you can worry about your business and I worry about your being attacked.
Is this boilerplate? Does one size fit all?
Not necessarily. When we do a cyber procedure and policy manual, a good part of it is boilerplate because it's all based on standards that are out in the industry. But we customize it to every small business because every small business is different. And obviously, if you contract me to write your disaster recovery plan, that's going to be very different for every business. But the idea, well, because you have different processes, you have different employees, you have different needs, you have different client bases. You may not need to have immediate internet access. You may not need to have controls in place for people working from home. It really depends on the nature of your business. If your main office burned down, how do you stay in business? That's the question. if a
So you're
hurricane,
talking about business continuity.
business continuity, exactly. So a disaster recovery plan is, how do I keep my business operating? And how do I get my hands on all the information I need to make the decisions I need to keep my business operating?
What type of resistance do small business owners react? Do they? The dumbest thing I can think of is, I'm a little guy. Nobody knows I'm around. I don't need this.
That's one of my major objections. When I talk to small business owners about cybersecurity, they say, I'm too small. I said, the bad actor isn't going to worry about me. They're going to go after Chase, and the IRS isn't worried about me. They're going to go after the big guys. And my response to that is twofold. One, if you look at the statistics, in the last 3 years, over 80% of the cyber attacks have been against small businesses, because the bad actors know that Chase has controls in place and they've got billions of dollars to protect their systems. They know the small guys don't. And all they need is to get access to a bank account or something like that, and they're in like Flynn.
They're in the bank.
Yeah. The second thing is with the governmental agencies, particularly after COVID, governments are looking for money. And 2 years ago, just the audits on the DFS in New York alone raised New York State $1.2 billion in fines for not complying with the regulations. Now, is it likely that you're going to be audited? Maybe, maybe not. But if you're living, from month to month trying to make a living, can you afford the risk? Another major objection I get is, I got an IT guy. I'm sure he takes care of all this stuff. And maybe they do. The problem with the regulations is that it's less about technology and all about paperwork. If you don't have the risk audit and have it done every year, if you don't have the policy and procedure manual, if you don't have the incident response plan laid out, if you don't have all the things in the regs, you could have the best firewall and the best antivirus and everything else in the world, and you're still going to get fined.
I was chuckling because you remember as well as I, when computers first became a necessity, the line was, we're going to have paperless.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm thinking of all the people who I say that to, and then they show me piles of paper that they still have to have.
Yeah. And I try and make people aware of other risks that they have. So for example, if you upgrade your computers, what do you do with the old ones? There's a ton of data on those hard drives. Mm-hmm. Can you make sure they're destroyed? Well, we do. Well, what about your copy machine? What about my copy machine? Well, most small businesses lease a copy machine. And every 3 years, the lease company comes in and takes out the old one, puts in a new one, and everybody's happy. Every copy machine has a hard drive. And everything you've ever copied is an image on that hard drive. And there are hundreds of thousands of hard drives sitting in warehouses, being ready to be shipped overseas with all the information that you've ever copied on them. And the bad actors know that. They break into the warehouses, they steal the hard drives, and they've got your client's social security numbers, their bank account numbers, their addresses, everything. So it's more than just, do I have antivirus running? Mm-hmm. This is a holistic approach to protect yourself, because we are in a whole new era of crime.
My favorite is the printer, that people don't realize that the bad actors can break into a system through a printer.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah. I had somebody come over and they said, your printer is connected by cable to your computer. I said, yeah, I don't want Wi-Fi. Why not? Well, nobody can break into my system through my printer if the computer is off, because it's a cable. It's not connected to the Wi-Fi.
Right.
But we're out of time.
Okay.
I want to share your contact information. And my final question for you is there anything that I didn't ask you which you wish I had asked you? And if I had asked you, what would you have said?
No, I think we've covered all of the major points. I think that if you're a small business owner, you're at risk. And one of the things that I or other companies, my competitors are out there, although they charge a heck of a lot more than I do, can help you so you can sleep better at night.
Isn't 917 a New York number?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
The Garlick Group is actually incorporated in New Jersey.
Huh.
I lived in Wyckoff, New Jersey for 25 years while I worked in Manhattan in the advertising industry.
Well, you're missing a heat wave.
Yes.
Andy, thank you very much. You provided a great deal of information, and I'm sure our viewers all appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching, and as always, please stay focused on success.